Thank you all for taking your time to join us today. We had hoped at this point in time in the year would be providing updates on a few more files that are open, including firearms marking and buyback, but we don't have any more response there. So today it's a little bit lighter agenda than what we initially thought. We're starting off with the Chief Firearms Office updates. The CFO of Ontario kind of triggered this. They sent out a memo basically explaining that they were having some changes in the issuing of business licenses. And what we're looking at now is that basically there's not a whole lot of large change. So there's nothing to be too alarmed about. It just seems to be that the Chief Firearms Office of the provinces across the country are becoming more collaborative and starting to work together a lot more to try to provide more consistencies between them all as far as how they're implementing the Firearms Act. So a couple of issues that have popped out of this that we just like to cover today is that the renewal process has not changed. It will not be more difficult to get your firearms license renewed. They're trying to do a little bit more diligence on new firearms licenses. Again, there's been an influx of new applications because of the handgun transfer prohibition. So there's been an influx of new business license applications. But there is no more difficulty for all the members currently that to renew their license. There has been the issue could pop up of outstanding handgun transfers and what happens if one of the clients that purchased these handguns goes ahead and reports it to the credit card company as a chargeback. So for those that aren't familiar, if anybody with any of the major credit cards tries to initiate a chargeback, the credit card company will give the money back to the individual purchaser and not necessarily have to provide proof that that firearm has been returned. In the case of this, the CFO has advised us that it is possible to transfer that firearm back to your business inventory, but you must make sure you notify that individual in writing that you are doing that. Their credit card contract states that they are relinquishing the right to that if they do a chargeback, but you have to make sure you let them know that you're transferring it back into your business inventory. If you don't provide that in writing, you can be exposing yourself to possible charges. So make sure you please, if you are going to transfer that firearm that's deemed not paid for back into your business, you let them know. There has been a couple of course, the exemptions to the handgun transfer process. One of them is the wilderness carry permits or the protection of life clause. We're seeing a large uptick of this around the country of people trying to apply for wilderness carry permits. Specifically in the province of Ontario, they will be providing a pre-authorization letter for those that have that authorization to buy. So you can ask for that in the province of Ontario. In May, Ontario is meeting with the other CFOs to try to bring the same policy to them. But we know now that wilderness carry permits are being issued in pretty much every province, with the exception of the maritime provinces. They don't issue the authorizations to carry for wilderness because their provincial laws don't allow them to. So, but as far as the rest of the country, there seem to be a big uptick in that. So once that letter is obtained, then you can sell a handgun to that individual and initiate a transfer of ownership, and it can be approved to that person. The same process is in place for anyone that has the Olympic shooting designation. So if they've been deemed to be an Olympic shooting exemption for the purposes of buying a handgun, they will be given a letter in Ontario. And again, we're going to find out what the other provinces are doing for that. At this point in time, we have not got clarification from the import branch of the Canadian government whether we're going to be able to exempt the whether we're going to be exempted for importing handguns for this purpose. Right now, we know we can initiate the transfer of ownership for those that are in the province, but we don't know if we can import at this point in time. We're still following up on that. As far as purchasing of handguns, every business in Ontario can transfer handguns into their business inventory for the purposes of resale to these categories of people, also for the purpose of export if they wish to do so. As long as they're licensed on their firearms license allows them to do so. So as long as you have restricted and or prohibited handguns on your license and you can own them, you can initiate a transfer of ownership from an individual to your business. So you still are allowed to buy handguns off individuals in Canada. Yes, we have. We initially were told that BC and the Yukon was not going to deliver or examinate for the restricted firearms license anymore. We have confirmed that that is incorrect, and they are going to be still granting RPALs in those provinces and territory. So across the country, you can still obtain an RPAL if you wish to purchase a handgun or a restricted rifle under these exemptions, of course, for handguns. So that will be continued, and the process for that has stayed the same. Now, we've had a lot of talk recently on the withdrawn amendments. The Minister of Public Safety has asked us to clarify with our membership kind of where we said there's been a lot of confusion and misinformation around this. So the first thing that we want to make clear is that the May 15th OIC that prohibited the basically the AR-15 and a lot of the tactical rifles that our government likes to use an invented term like assault style, that order in council remains in effect. So those firearms that were prohibited on that day still remains in effect by the order in council. The amendments, of course, we're looking to put in what they call an evergreen amendment to make sure that that's entrenched in Canadian law going forward. Now that those amendments have been pulled, it does not change the order in council. The order in council is still the binding law of Canada. So we still cannot transfer or move or use those firearms on that prohibition. But the firearms that were added, there were many additions that were put on there, including a lot of semi-automatic pistol caliber carbines, a lot of rimfire rifles. Those additions, those amendments did not go through, and they're not part of Bill C-21 anymore. So right now, that bill is moving forward without those amendments. They've been withdrawn. And right now, we are sitting in a situation where we're back to the prohibitions from the May OIC. So that includes mainly your AR-15 rifles and your Mini 14 family, your CZ858s, and the Beretta CX4 Storms, and of course the Springfield and Norinco M1As. But many other subcategories obviously were also added in there, but that's the main families. But trying to just reiterate that prohibition is still in place. I think we covered all of that. As far as on the CSAAA side, we're excited to announce that we're going to be doing some upcoming fundraising dinners. We've got lots of feedback from the membership that in 2023, the way the business has evolved, the trade shows are becoming not as popular and not as much of an event to attend, especially for our vendors. Our orders are and lead times are way further out than what they used to be, and therefore orders tend to be done long before the trade shows come around. So it's becoming less viable for our vendors to get there. So we're looking to do a pivot and to listen to our membership and to change over to offering fundraising dinners. Those are going to be a lot more regional to try to get everybody in the nation on board. So if you could please keep an eye out on your email for those dinners, and we would welcome all members and non-members to attend. We would like to see your faces out there, and they're great networking events for all people in the firearms industry and the sports shooting industry in Canada. So please keep an eye out for those emails. We plan to host them throughout the country, and at least one in every region. We also have our June 19th, we have our AGM. So the AGM is going to be coming forward, and that's where we have elections of our new officers. The CSAAA does take nominations from the floor for that. So please have a look at our website or send any nomination forms to info@csaaa.org. There are 5 spots currently open and for election this year. So if you think that that you'd like to run, please put your name in. And if you know a colleague that you think should be nominated, please do nominate them. The more the merrier, especially for those in different regions of the country. We wish that to have national representation. So please put your nominations forward, and we will be in contact with those individuals that get nominated to confirm that they wish to stand. And again, please join us for our AGM on Monday, June the 19th. that way you can have some say on who helps represent the industry at the different federal events. So please get involved and help out.
Awesome, thank you. So we'll open up the floor to Q&A, open discussion. If you guys want to use the raise hand function to be able to talk, that would be helpful. And for anyone that missed any of this meeting, I will send a recording of the meeting as well as the slideshow and the notes to all of the members. So if anyone has any final comments, you can share them now. Or perfect. We've got Joelle.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, absolutely.
Great. Yeah, hey, this is Joel from Border View, and I've just got a question. I think, Wes, you covered it briefly, that maybe there's more information coming, but regarding those who do have an exemption to purchase a handgun, so wilderness carry, Olympians, et cetera, whether or not they're currently allowing new import of firearms to businesses to then sell to those exempted individuals, what that process looks like, if they need the import permit, if the end user has to be named ahead of time before the import permit is granted. If you have any more information about that process. Thank you.
Yes, it's a great question. And yeah, we touched on it briefly, but just to clarify, we are looking for more information from GAC on that and from the different CFOs. That process has not been finalized yet. We are understanding that they are going to be allowing the import of handguns for that purpose. We're still under the freeze at this point in time, but we have been pushing them to get answers on that. And we should, as soon as we have the information, we'll post it on our website and also send out an e-blast with that information. But at this time, we're not aware of what that process looks like. Right now, the only firearms that are being sold to those exempted individuals are the ones that are currently inside Canada or being produced in Canada.
Awesome. Thank you. Can I ask one quick follow-up question?
Please.
Yeah, so this is on a different subject. So regarding transport and what privileges a business, or activities rather, a business has on their business license, it's recently come up in our case, specifically regarding transporting firearms within Canada that are not necessarily owned by the business. So an example would be if an estate would like us to pick up firearms from one location and move them.
Yeah, so you're asking whether or not you're allowed to do that, or whether, or you're trying to say a statement as to what they told you.
Want us to get a carrier license to do so, and I'm wondering if you guys have any experience on the distinction between a carrier license and a business license for that type of activity.
I'm on here.
Hey, I'm in. Are you? Okay.
So yes, that the carrier license is, of course, the carrier license that's given to all couriers and transport companies in Canada. It does not usually allow those firearms to be registered to the business. So in the case of your business, I do believe the best practice would be to have those transferred into the business inventory. Of course, you can get an authorization to carry on demand for firearms that are registered to other people, but you do need a specific transportation certificate for ones that are not registered to your business. But if you have the transportation privileges on your business license, you can then do so by transferring them into your business.
What about non-restricted? Sort of, but a non-restricted, obviously I'm not transferring them into the business, and that's actually where the issues arisen. And specifically from the border, right, we do import-export. So some other businesses have asked us to pick up their load from the border while we're there and bring it up and drop it to them. And that's where the question has arisen, if we can do that A to B transport of a non-restricted under our license, or if that requires a separate carrier license.
Yes, and it's a great question. So that technically, and again, I'm going to term technically here, because if those firearms are owned by the other business, you would have to have a carrier license because they're not owned by yours, and you don't have the transportation privileges for them. However, if you have an open, non-restricted transfer reference number between your two businesses, that transfer of ownership can of course happen back and forth quite easily, because you only need one number, of course, open for each 90-day period. So again, the firearms that are owned by your business are covered by your authorization to carry and to transport. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
It helps clarify a bit. Yeah, the TRN transfer reference number might aid. We are in the process of getting a carrier license. It's just kind of come up newly here, and I had a conversation with Terry Hamilton, our BC CFO, on Saturday, and she similarly said, it's probably a little bit of a gray area, and you're safer just to get a carrier license just to make sure it's totally covered. But a non-restricted firearm, a business in possession of it, is generally not a problem. Like moving, if grandpa dies and I get called to go pick it up at his house and move it to grandson's house, and they're going to pay me $50 to do that, that historically would not be an issue, even though I don't necessarily own it. I'm constructively taking responsibility for it during that time. But yeah.
Yeah, and again, just to clarify that, because now you do have those, you do have to have any transfer of ownership or any firearms transfer has to have that FRN number produced. It would be safe to have that number outstanding, whether it be from an estate or from an individual. It'd be safe to have that number in place to cover that transport.
For sure, yeah, we always do. That is helpful. Thank you very much.
I got a question on that.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Clearly.
Yep.
Okay. You're talking about restricted, but non-restricted. When old people die, and there's going to be tens of thousands of them, and they've got the 12, 3, 4, 5, 6 guns. Are you now advising that if you don't have a carrier's license, that you cannot move that gun from the possession of the estate executor to your business for storage, pending anything else, such as deactivation, etc., unless you have a carrier license?
That is not necessarily correct. No. So the problem with it, Ed, is the conditions of your firearms license are varying between each business license. So it's hard to give a blanket response because, for example, an individual retailer could have a firearms business license, which gives them the authorization to transport 12-3 firearms, non-restricted and prohibited firearms, to the store for the purpose of consignment. The problem with the handguns, and where I believe this came as an issue from Border View in this situation, is that the condition of consignment sale is no longer an authorized condition because we can't transfer handguns inside of Canada. So that was where a lot of these are coming up, where now people are asking about whether they can cover these transport privileges on their license. So one of the ways to do so is, of course, if you're licensed to own restricted firearms and you are allowed to transport the restricted firearms owned by your business, you could transfer them into your business. But each license must have the conditions and must have the specific privileges for each class of firearm they're dealing in. So for 12-3, you must have the conditions on your license to be able to pick those firearms up. And of course, there's been no real change on 12-3 procedures. You can still pick them up and bring them to your business for the purposes of storage, deactivation, and or consignment sale. Where we have the changes, of course, are in the new OIC firearms and the restricted firearms. So did that answer your question?
Yep.
Oh, and sorry, Wes, just to clarify it, for us, it wasn't even handguns that became the issue. It's actually all non-restricteds. And what we're being told is even for storage, I can't pick it up from a deceased individual, even for a non-restricted, and transport it from his house to my licensed premises if I don't own that. And in storage, I'm not going to be dishonest and say I own it. I'm just storing it. Now I'm taking constructive possession of it. And I'm taking responsibility for it. I'm insuring it, but I don't own it per se, right, in my inventory. And so that's where the questions have arisen for us. But I don't know if that sheds any further light.
And this is with the British Columbia Chief Firearms Office, correct?
Correct. Initiating the conversation started at CBSA and then the BC CFO as of this weekend, talking with them as well.
We'll place that question under advisement as well, because I know that in Ontario there are businesses that have a condition of their license to store non-restricted firearms and to transport non-restricted firearms for the purpose of storage. So that would not include a transfer of ownership. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah, and it's an additional condition that we don't have.
Sure that BC is on board with issuing the same condition on a firearms business license. So we'll take that back to the Ontario CFO for their roundtable discussion in May.
Thank you.
I can't seem to raise my hand. I'd like to raise my hand to ask a question, but I can't find that on the screen.
Hello.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, no problem. We'll take Charles's
Yes.
question first, and then we'll get to you next.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Hi, Wes, Jim. I have a question about SECU that there was a meeting a couple weeks ago where Pam Damoff was interrogating Linda Kaiko, our women's Olympic shooter. And I'm not sure if she misspoke, probably did, but Pam Damoff said that gun ranges are still allowed to import handguns for individuals. And I've never heard this before. I wonder if you can clarify.
Yes, that's exactly kind of where we come from last, Charles, when we had the discussion with the Chief Firearms Office, is that we are understanding that they are going to be opening up import licenses for us to bring firearms in, A, for the purposes of ranges, and B, for the purposes of transferring to individuals that are licensed to purchase from previous discussion, like the ATC wilderness individuals and or Olympic target shooters. The process for that has not been finalized yet. So we are working diligently to get that information out to the dealers to find out how we are permitted to do this. But as of right now, we understand from GAC that they have not issued any of those permits for import since the transfer or since the import freeze happened. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, Texas, you're up.
Okay, thank you very much. I just had a couple of things to relate.
But I don't have mine.
First was I was speaking with the CFO's office on Wednesday for Ontario, and while I was speaking with them, they assured me that all the transfers in Ontario would be completed by the end of this month, which is good. And she said, including your late transfer. Now, Bill C-21 passed on the 21st of October, and I thought about it and read it over. And on the 10th of November, I applied for a transfer. So that will be one of the ones that's included. And I applied for just an inter-family transfer from myself to my wife for a 357 Bond Derringer. And it was using the wilderness permit as a basis. So I'll by the end of the month, I'll have the answer on that as to whether it's acceptable or not. Now, I did have one question for you, Wes, and that's you mentioned several times about wilderness permits and that. I wondered, do you have any idea at all how many wilderness permits there are in Ontario?
No, we do understand that that there has been directive inside the CFO to try to limit the total number, but we have not been given the number of how many are existing and how many have been applied for. But they did acknowledge to us there's been a large influx of new applications, but we did not get exact numbers, Mr. McDonald.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is I had a wilderness permit even before they existed, and I also helped write the wilderness program course, safety course. And then of course, 4 years ago, they disbanded that, the course. There's no more instructors. So if you want a wilderness permit, all you have to do is apply for it, which I did, like on my wife's behalf. But if you go back to when the wilderness permits first started, I used to hold 1% of the wilderness permits for the province of Ontario. I had 6 of them for myself and my family members. And then the last time, maybe 5 or 6 or so years ago, I asked the person that was renewing it, I said, how many wilderness permits is there in Ontario? And I got a call asking, like, why do you want to know that information? I said, I'm just curious to see. And at that point in time, there was less than 200 wilderness permits for the province of Ontario. So it's not, there might be a major influx or something, but there's not that many permits out there. And that includes like bear baiters, trappers, bush pilots, nuisance animals, there's quite a few different categories. In fact, you can get a wilderness permit if you're a commercial minnow trapper. You can get a wilderness permit for that, or a timber scaler. There's quite a few different applications that you can fill for that. But the whole point is there's not very many people that have a wilderness permit.
No, you're correct. And that's what they've been saying. There's been a large influx of new applicants, which people are becoming more aware of it. But just to clarify, Texas says that is the process currently in Ontario. You just have to apply for it. And as long as you have an occupation deemed valid, they'll issue it. It is different in each province right now for the application process. It's not the same throughout Canada.
No, I fully understand that, Wes. Just I was saying that there's not a whole lot of wilderness permits in Ontario. And one of the other things that they implemented, like there was quite a few different changes over the years with the wilderness permit. And like you had mentioned earlier about caliber restrictions, for bear hunting, there is caliber restrictions. And if you use a 9mm or a 45 ACP, it has to shoot plus P ammunition. Ordinary ammunition is not very good, so the proper person would just stock up on a whole bunch of empty brass and then load up his own however he wanted. And if it says plus P on the case, you're covered, sort of thing, But I know that's what I did for my. I decided to carry a 1911 for a while, and I stopped in St. Peter Pie from Corbon Ammunition, picked up a bunch of plus P brass so I could load up my own for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so we'll do one last call for questions or comments. If anyone can't use the raise hand function, feel free to unmute yourself and yell out. All right, I think that's it. I'm going to send a recording of this meeting again to anybody that missed the beginning or missed any parts of it, as well as some notes. And if anyone has any questions pending, forward them to us and we'll get back to you with an answer.
Thank you very much, all.
Thank you, everyone.